UFOs and UAPs, the mystery in our skies. For decades, people have looked at the sky and asked the same question. What was that? A strange light. An object moving in an unusual direction. Something appearing on radar. Or perhaps something that seems to move faster than expected. For some people, the answer is obvious. Aliens. Visitors from another world. But science requires us to ask a different question. What do we actually know? Today, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating mysteries of the modern world. UFOs, or, as they are often called today, UAPs. We will explore what they are, famous cases from history, government investigations, military videos, possible explanations, and what scientists know today. And while we investigate the mystery, you are also going to practice your English. So, let's begin with a very important question. What is a UFO? UFO means Unidentified Flying Object. The key word is not flying. It is unidentified. If you see something in the sky and you cannot identify it, at that moment, it is unidentified. But that does not automatically mean it came from another planet. It simply means we don't know what it is yet. Today, another term is commonly used. UAP. UAP means Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. The term is broader than UFO. It can describe observations that appear unusual and cannot immediately be explained. NASA has studied how scientists can collect better information about UAPs. The United States Department of Defense also has an office dedicated to investigating reports. So why can something in the sky be difficult to identify? There are many reasons. Distance is one. Imagine seeing a small light far away at night. How large is it? How fast is it moving? Is it 1 kilometer away? Or 50 kilometers away? Without knowing the distance, estimating its size and speed can be extremely difficult. Perspective can also create confusion. An object may appear to move quickly because the observer is moving. A pilot inside a fast aircraft, for example, sees the world from a very different perspective than a person standing on the ground. Then there is the atmosphere, clouds, fog, temperature, light, and other atmospheric conditions can change what we see. Technology creates more possibilities. Airplanes, helicopters, drones, weather balloons, research balloons, satellites, rocket launches. All of these can look unusual under the right conditions. Even planets can create confusion. Venus is extremely bright. For someone who does not recognize it, a bright object in the night sky can appear mysterious. Satellites can also reflect sunlight. Sometimes they appear as bright moving lights. And modern satellite groups can create patterns that surprise people who have never seen them before. But what about radar? Or infrared cameras? Surely machines cannot make the same mistakes humans make. Sensors are extremely useful. But sensors also have limitations. A camera records light. Radar uses radio waves. Infrared systems detect heat. Each system gives us a different type of information. And sometimes the information is incomplete. This is why scientists prefer multiple sources of good data. Imagine that we have a video of a small light. That is interesting. But now imagine we also have radar data. Several cameras. The exact location. The distance. Weather information. And observations from independent witnesses. Now we can investigate much more carefully. This leads us to one of the most important words in today's story. Evidence. Evidence is information that helps us decide whether an idea is true. A story can be interesting. A photograph can be interesting. A video can be interesting. But scientists want enough reliable data to test different explanations. And sometimes, there is not enough information. A case can remain unidentified. This does not prove an extraordinary explanation. It means the available evidence is not sufficient to identify the phenomenon confidently. NASA has made this distinction very clear. It says there is currently no evidence that UAPs are extraterrestrial. At the same time, scientists recognize that unusual observations can still be worth studying. Because science begins with questions. What did the observer see? What did the sensors detect? Can we reproduce the effect? Is there a natural explanation? Was it technology? Was there an error? Or is there simply not enough information? That is the approach we will use throughout this story. We will not begin by saying, "It was aliens." But we will also not begin by saying, "Nothing interesting happened." Instead, we will examine the evidence. Some cases have simple explanations. Others are more difficult. And some remain unresolved because the available information is incomplete. But if unidentified does not mean extraterrestrial, why did UFOs become so strongly connected with aliens? For that, we need history. We need to travel back to the 1940s, a time of new aircraft, military secrets, the beginning of the Cold War, and growing public fascination with technology and space. Then, in 1947, an American pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing something unusual in the sky. Newspapers picked up the story. A famous expression entered popular culture: flying saucers. And only a few weeks later, another event would create a mystery that people are still discussing today. Roswell. The modern UFO era had begun. The modern UFO era had begun. Let's return to June 1947. Kenneth Arnold was flying a small airplane near Mount Rainier in Washington state. During the flight, he reported seeing 9 unusual objects moving across the sky. Arnold described their movement as similar to a saucer skipping across water. Newspapers reported the story. Soon, the expression, "flying saucer," became famous. And something interesting happened. More people began reporting strange objects in the sky. Then, only a few weeks later, came Roswell. In July 1947, unusual debris was discovered on a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. The local military initially announced that it had recovered a flying disc. That announcement created excitement. But the story quickly changed. The military said the material came from a weather balloon. For many years, Roswell received relatively limited public attention. But decades later, the story returned. People claimed that the object was actually an extraterrestrial spacecraft. Some stories even included alien bodies and a secret government operation. Roswell became one of the most famous UFO stories in history. But what does the documented evidence tell us? Years later, the United States Air Force investigated the incident again. Its investigation concluded that the recovered material was connected to Project Mogul. Project Mogul was a secret program that used high-altitude balloons and equipment to detect possible Soviet nuclear tests. This detail is important. In 1947, the project was classified. The United States could not simply explain everything it was doing. And this brings us to the Cold War. After World War II, tension between the United States and the Soviet Union increased. Both countries developed new aircraft, new weapons, rockets, radar systems, and secret military technology. So when someone reported an unusual object in the sky, the military had another important question. Was it Soviet technology? UFO reports were not only a question about aliens. They could also be a question of national security. In 1948, the U.S. Air Force created Project Sign to investigate UFO reports. Project Sign was later replaced by Project Grudge. Then, in 1952, came the most famous government investigation of the period. Project Blue Book. Its job was to collect and analyze UFO reports. Scientists and military investigators examined thousands of cases. They considered many possible explanations. Aircraft, weather balloons, stars, planets, meteors, clouds, optical effects, and sometimes insufficient information. One scientist connected to these investigations became especially famous. J. Allen Hynek. Hynek was an astronomer. At first, he was very skeptical about UFO reports. He helped investigators look for astronomical explanations. But over time, Hynek became interested in some cases that he believed deserved more serious scientific investigation. This did not mean he had proven extraterrestrial visitors existed. It meant he believed unexplained observations should be studied carefully instead of automatically dismissed. Meanwhile, public fascination continued growing. The 1950s were the beginning of the space age. People were thinking about rockets, the moon, other planets, and the possibility of life beyond Earth. Science fiction became extremely popular. Movies showed flying saucers arriving from space. Sometimes the visitors were friendly. Sometimes they wanted to invade Earth. UFOs became more than reports in military files. They became part of popular culture. But Project Blue Book continued its work. By the time the program ended, it had collected more than 12,000 reports. Most received conventional explanations. A smaller number remained unidentified. Again, we need to remember our most important rule. Unidentified does not mean extraterrestrial. Sometimes there simply was not enough reliable information to determine what happened. In the 1960s, the Air Force supported an independent university study led by physicist Edward Condon at the University of Colorado. The resulting report concluded that additional UFO study was unlikely to produce major scientific discoveries. In 1969, Project Blue Book ended. The Air Force stated that its investigations had found no evidence that UFOs represented a threat to national security. It also said there was no evidence that the unidentified cases represented technology beyond known scientific knowledge. And it found no evidence that they were extraterrestrial vehicles. Was that the end of the UFO story? Not even close. Public interest continued. Books appeared. Movies became more ambitious. Television programs explored mysterious sightings. Stories about secret military bases became part of UFO culture. And Roswell became more famous decades after the original event. But something else was changing. Technology. Cameras became better. Radar became more advanced. Military aircraft gained sophisticated sensors. Pilots could observe objects using systems that people in 1947 could hardly imagine. This created an interesting possibility. If something unusual appeared in the sky, perhaps we could collect better evidence. And decades after Project Blue Book ended, American military pilots began reporting encounters that would bring the UFO question back into government offices. This time, people would not only hear stories. They would see military videos. The language would also begin to change. UFO would increasingly become UAP, and the mystery would enter a new era. The modern mystery. And the mystery would enter a new era. In November 2004, U.S. Navy pilots were training near the coast of California. Something unusual appeared. Pilots reported seeing a strange white object with no obvious wings. Commander David Fravor later described the encounter. It became famous as the Tic Tac incident. Military sensors also collected information. But for years, most people knew very little about the event. Then other unusual encounters were reported by Navy personnel. Several military videos eventually became public. You may know their names: Fleur, Gimbal, Go Fast. The videos quickly became famous. People asked, what are these objects? Drones? Secret aircraft? Sensor effects? Or something completely different? In 2020, the United States Department of Defense officially released 3 Navy videos. This confirmed that the videos were authentic military recordings. But it did not confirm that the objects were alien spacecraft. That difference is extremely important. A real video does not automatically prove an extraordinary explanation. It only proves that the recording is real. The explanation is a separate question. Government interest continued to grow. And the language changed too. Instead of UFO, officials increasingly used UAP. The U.S. government created programs to collect and investigate reports. Eventually, the Department of Defense established AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Its work includes analyzing reports of unidentified phenomena. Then NASA entered the public conversation. In 2022, NASA announced an independent UAP study. NASA was not trying to prove that aliens were visiting Earth. Its question was scientific. How can we study unusual observations better? What information should we collect? Which sensors should we use? And how can we improve the quality of the data? In 2023, NASA's independent team published its report. One major conclusion was simple. We need better data. Many UAP reports contain too little reliable information to reach a strong conclusion. A video may not show the distance. A witness may not know the speed. A sensor can sometimes create unusual visual effects. Without enough information, an object may remain unidentified. But another development attracted enormous public attention. In 2023, former U.S. intelligence officer David Grush testified before Congress. He made extraordinary claims about alleged secret programs involving recovered objects and non-human material. His testimony received international attention. But we need to separate testimony from verified evidence. A person can report what they believe, experienced, or were told. That is different from physical evidence that independent scientists can examine. AARO later reviewed historical claims about secret government programs and extraterrestrial technology. Its 2024 historical report said it found no empirical evidence that the U.S. government or private companies had been secretly reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology. It also found no evidence that an official U.S. investigation had confirmed a UAP as extraterrestrial technology. Many investigated cases have received ordinary explanations. Balloons, birds, aircraft, satellites, and other objects or visual effects. Some cases remain unresolved. But remember, unresolved does not mean alien. Sometimes there is simply not enough information. So where does this leave us in 2026? The mystery has not disappeared. People continue reporting unusual things in the sky. Governments continue collecting information. Sensors continue improving. And scientists continue searching for life beyond Earth. That last point is important. Scientists seriously consider the possibility that life exists somewhere else in the universe. We have discovered thousands of planets beyond our solar system. Scientists study Mars, icy moons, distant planets, and possible signs of life. The universe is enormous. So asking whether life exists somewhere else is a serious scientific question. But there is a major difference between saying, life may exist somewhere else in the universe, and saying, extraterrestrial spacecraft are visiting Earth. The first is a scientific possibility. The second requires evidence. According to NASA, there is currently no credible evidence that UAPs are extraterrestrial. But the real mystery is still fascinating. What are the unresolved cases? Can better sensors identify them? Can artificial intelligence help analyze the data? Could some observations reveal unusual atmospheric phenomena? Could others involve technology? Or will most eventually receive ordinary explanations? We don't know. And sometimes, we don't know is the most scientific answer possible. Now, let's review some useful English words. Unidentified means not yet identified. A sighting is an occasion when someone sees something unusual. Evidence is information that helps determine whether an idea is true. A witness is someone who sees an event. A sensor is a device that detects or measures something. Extraterrestrial means originating outside Earth. And an investigation is a careful attempt to discover the truth. From Kenneth Arnold in 1947. To Roswell. Project Blue Book. Military pilots. Government investigations. NASA. And modern UAP research. The technology has changed. The language has changed. But the central question remains. What are we seeing? Some mysteries have been solved. Others remain open. Perhaps future technology will give us better answers. Until then, curiosity is valuable. But curiosity works best when it travels together with evidence. Thank you for listening to Learn and Chat. Today, you explored one of the world's greatest modern mysteries. And you practiced your English at the same time. Keep asking questions. Keep looking for evidence. Keep listening. Keep learning. Stay curious. And I'll see you in our next story.